The basic message is, how is fall color produced? Well, as the days get shorter in the fall, trees stop producing the chlorophyll, which is responsible for the green color in the leaves. So as the trees start to remove the chlorophyll in the fall, it unmasks pigments in the leaves that really produce the fall color.
I feel like this year, though, we saw more vibrant colors than we have ever seen before. How and why did this happen?
Primary factor is the weather. And that's where our weather this year was a whole lot different than it has been in the past. It's not like the public would probably recognize the difference, but rainfall has a direct bearing, for instance, on fall color. If we have droughts and floods, it can reduce or prevent fall color, actually. So typically a lot of years will go from the 60s and 70s down to below 32 degrees, and if it does that for any length of time, the leaves just turn brown and they drop. So if we slowly cool down as we did this fall and the days get shorter, assuming that we're getting adequate rainfall, which we have this year, typically would have at least some fall color. But this year we had that perfect combination of all the above. So there's also a few trees that consistently produce fall color better than others in Texas. So that would include ginkgo, for instance, Chinese pistache and maples, also big-tooth and Japanese maples, for instance. Those are consistently going to give us a little bit more fall color.
And when was the last time you saw fall color like this in North Texas?
Well, it's not very often, but it seems to me in the 80s and in the 90s somewhere, we had a couple of good years that had pretty good fall color. I'm not sure if I could compare it to today because back then we didn't have cameras and electronic photographs and things like that we could really track it. But in the last 10 or 20 years, this year's probably been the best.
Any predictions on what we're going to see in the spring?
From what I know, we should have some normal flowering of our trees, which would be ideal. But a lot of that also depends on the weather. There's times that the weather has a great deal to do with the spring blooms as well. If we're starting to warm up in the springtime, it gets up in the 60s, 70s, maybe lower 80s, and things start to bloom, and then it drops back down into the 30s, all those blooms drop off the trees, and we don't hardly have much spring blooms.